The slap echoed through the opulent Fifth Avenue store, but the entitled socialite who delivered it had no idea she'd just provoked the quiet wife of the man who owned everything. The air in the Aura flagship store on Fifth Avenue always felt different, like it was filtered through money. It was a hushed, reverent space of cool marble, soft lighting, and the faint, clean scent of leather and expensive perfume. It was my husband Liam's world, the empire he'd built from the ground up. To me, it was just the place I had to go to pick up his anniversary gift, a custom-engraved timepiece I'd been planning for months. I was dressed for comfort, not for an Aura showroom, a pair of well-worn jeans, a simple cashmere sweater, and my hair pulled back in a messy bun. I looked like a grad student on a field trip, not the wife of the man whose name was subtly etched in gold on the front door. I was standing at the special collections counter, patiently waiting my turn. The young associate, a nervous-looking man named Thomas, was dealing with a particularly difficult customer. She was a woman who practically radiated entitlement, draped in a stark white pantsuit that looked like it would shatter if she sat down too quickly. Her blonde hair was shellacked into a perfect helmet, and her face was a mask of bored disdain. She was complaining, loudly, that the specific shade of alligator leather for her bespoke handbag was a fraction of a shade too common. Thomas was sweating, apologizing profusely, when the woman finally dismissed him with a flick of her wrist. She turned, her cold eyes scanning the short line, and landed on me. A slow, condescending smirk spread across her face. She took a deliberate step, placing herself directly in front of me at the counter, her back to me. "Now," she announced to the beleaguered Thomas, "let's talk about the diamond clasp. I have a board meeting to get to." I cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said, my voice polite but firm. I believe I was next. She didn't even turn around fully, just craned her neck to look down her nose at me. "I'm sorry?" she asked, her voice dripping with mock confusion, as if a piece of furniture had just spoken. "There's a line," I repeated calmly. "I was waiting." She finally pivoted, her entire body rigid with indignation. She performed a slow, insulting head-to-toe scan of my outfit, her lip curling in disgust. "Oh, I see," she said, her voice loud enough for the entire floor to hear. "I'm sure whatever trinket you're here to return can wait. Some of us have actual business to conduct." My patience, already thin, began to fray. "I'm not returning anything. I'm here for a pickup, and I've been waiting for 20 minutes. "A pickup?" She laughed, a short, ugly bark. "Darling, this is the Haute Collection counter. I think you're looking for the costume jewelry section. It's downstairs, with the other tourists." The thinly veiled racism hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A few other customers shifted uncomfortably. Thomas looked like he wanted the marble floor to swallow him whole. I felt a familiar heat rise in my chest, the anger that Liam always told me to control. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I said, my voice losing its warmth. "Look," she snapped, stepping closer, invading my personal space. "I don't know who you think you are, but I am Elizabeth Beaumont. I spend more in this store in a month than you'll make in your entire life. Now, be a good little girl and run along before you embarrass yourself further." That was it. The condescension, the racism, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance. I stood my ground. "I'm not going anywhere, Mrs. Beaumont." Her face, already tight with Botox and privilege, contorted into a mask of pure fury. She saw my refusal not as a simple disagreement, but as a direct challenge to her entire world order. She saw a black woman in jeans who wasn't immediately cowering. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. And then it happened. Faster than I could process, her hand shot out. The sharp crack of her palm connecting with my cheek echoed through the silent showroom. The sound was obscene in the hallowed quiet. For a second, the world went white with shock and the stinging, electric pain. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. My cheek was on fire, a prickling heat spreading across my skin. I could feel the imprint of her fingers. Mrs. Beaumont looked triumphant, her chest puffed out, a smug, satisfied glint in her eyes. She had put the hired help, the charity case, the person who didn't belong, back in her place. The store manager, a man I knew as David, came scurrying over, his face pale with panic. Mrs. Beaumont, is everything all right? He asked, his eyes darting from her furious face to my stunned one, his instincts clearly telling him to placate the customer in the expensive suit. No, David, it is not all right, she spat, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. This person was harassing me. I want her removed from this store immediately, and I want her charged with assault. My head was spinning, the injustice of it all threatening to choke me, the humiliation, the rage. David turned to me, his expression a mixture of fear and professional apology. Ma'am, he started, his voice placating, perhaps it would be best if you... He was going to ask me to leave. After being publicly assaulted, he was going to ask me, Ois, to leave to appease her. A cold, terrifying calm washed over me, extinguishing the fiery rage and leaving behind something hard and sharp as ice. I raised my hand, not to my cheek, but to silence him. I met his gaze, and I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes as he recognized a tone he had only ever heard from one other person. David, I said, my voice dangerously low and steady. Before you say another word, I want you to get your phone. I want you to call the emergency contact number for this store, the one labeled CEO, code red, and I want you to tell my husband that his wife was just assaulted in his flagship store. For a moment, the only sound in the vast, marbled space was the quiet hum of the climate control system. David's face, which had been pale with panic, went completely bloodless. His eyes widened, and a tiny bead of sweat traced a path down his temple. He knew that number. It wasn't just a number. It was a legend among the upper echelons of aura management, a mythical emergency line that no one had ever actually used. It was the corporate equivalent of a nuclear launch code. Elizabeth Beaumont, however, just stared at me. Then a slow, ugly smile spread across her face. She actually laughed. It was a brittle, condescending sound that grated on the nerves. His wife? She scoffed, turning to David as if sharing a private joke. Did you hear that, David? This delusional little charity case thinks she's married to Liam Sterling. She turned back to me, her eyes glinting with malicious glee. Darling, Liam Sterling wouldn't use you to clean the mud from his shoes. I've known Liam for years. I sit on 2 charity boards with his mother. His wife is, well, let's just say she's not you. She was digging her own grave, shoveling the dirt with a diamond-encrusted spade. The part that stung was that she was almost right. The public didn't know me. Liam and I had made a conscious decision to keep our marriage private. He was the face of Aura. I was a private citizen, an architect with my own career. I hated the galas, the flashbulbs, the cloying insincerity of his world. He'd always worried something like this would happen, that I'd be mistreated by people who didn't know who I was. I had always brushed it off, telling him I could handle myself. Now, looking at Elizabeth Beaumont's smug, hateful face, I felt a grim, hollow finality. This was the end of our quiet life. My silence and my unwavering stare seemed to unnerve David more than her screaming ever could. He looked from her triumphant face to my cold, calm one. He saw the truth. I don't know how, but he saw it. Maybe it was the steel in my voice, a tone he'd likely heard from my husband during a tense conference call. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. He pulled out his phone with a trembling hand, his fingers fumbling with the screen. "David, what do you think you're doing?" Elizabeth snapped, her smile faltering. "Call security. Get this trash out of here." But David wasn't listening to her anymore. He held the phone to his ear, and after a single, terrifying second, his posture straightened as if he'd been zapped with a cattle prod. "Yes, sir," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Yes, Mr. Sterling. Right away, sir." He listened, his eyes darting around the store as if seeing it for the first time. She's right here. She appears unharmed, sir, but..." He flinched, pulling the phone slightly away from his ear as if the voice on the other end was physically hot. "Yes, sir. I understand. Completely." He hung up. The silence that followed was different. It was heavy, charged with a dreadful anticipation. Every customer on the floor was now frozen, pretending to browse but watching the drama with rapt attention. David wouldn't look at Elizabeth. He turned to me, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. "Ma'am," he said, his voice barely audible, "Mrs. Sterling, can I get you a water, a chair, anything at all?" The shift in power was so sudden, so total, that Elizabeth Beaumont actually took a step back. The color drained from her face, leaving two garish splotches of pink blush on her cheeks. What is this? What's going on?" she demanded, her voice losing its sharp edge, replaced by a note of shrill uncertainty. I ignored her. I just looked at David. "Lock the front doors," I said, my voice quiet but carrying the full weight of my husband's authority. "Nobody leaves." "Nobody. But the customers," he stammered. "Nobody," I repeated. As one of the junior associates scrambled to lock the grand glass doors, trapping us all inside, the reality began to dawn on Elizabeth. Her carefully constructed world of privilege and power was cracking around her. "This is ridiculous," she blustered, trying to regain control. "I'm leaving. You can't hold me here." She marched toward the doors, expecting them to open for her, as everything in her life always had. When she found them locked, she rattled the handle, a look of pure confusion on her face. That's when the first black SUV pulled up, screeching to a halt directly in front of the store, followed immediately by another. They weren't Liam's usual cars. These were the vehicles used by his executive protection team. The main doors, the ones David's associate had just locked, were suddenly thrown open from the outside with a decisive thud. A man I knew well stepped inside. Marcus. He was the head of Liam's security detail, a former Secret Service agent who was built like a refrigerator and had the warm, friendly demeanor of one. He never smiled. He swept the room with a practiced, assessing gaze, his eyes missing nothing. He ignored David's terrified stammering and Elizabeth's shocked gasp. His focus landed on me, and he strode across the marble floor, his polished shoes making no sound. He stopped a respectful foot in front of me, his eyes quickly scanning my face, lingering for a fraction of a second on the red mark blooming on my cheek. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, his voice a low, controlled rumble that filled the silent store. "Liam is 1 minute out. He asked me to come in first. He wants to know one thing." "Hey." Marcus paused, and his cold, professional eyes drifted from my face to land squarely on a stunned and trembling Elizabeth Beaumont. "He wants to know who touched you." The moment Marcus's question hung in the air, a new kind of silence fell over the store. It wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. Every breath was held. Every eye was fixed on the unfolding tableau. Elizabeth Beaumont looked as if she'd been petrified, her hand still frozen near the door handle, her face a ghastly mosaic of confusion and dawning horror. The name Liam Sterling had been a weapon for her to wield, a symbol of her social standing. Now it was a thundercloud gathering directly over her head, and she was just beginning to feel the drop in pressure. I didn't answer Marcus immediately. I let the silence stretch, let it suffocate her. I met his gaze, and with a slight, almost imperceptible nod, I tilted my head toward Elizabeth. That was all it took. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. It was the subtle, lethal stillness of a predator that has locked onto its prey. Two other men, dressed in identical dark suits, stepped through the open doors behind him and flanked his position, their presence turning the high-end boutique into something that felt more like a secure government facility. Elizabeth finally found her voice, though it was a thin, reedy thing, a pale imitation of her earlier bravado. "This is insane," she stammered, looking wildly between me, Marcus, and the terrified store manager. "I haven't done anything. This woman was causing a disturbance. I'm the victim here." Marcus didn't even grant her a glance. His attention was still on me. "The CCTV footage from the entire floor has been secured, Mrs. Sterling," he said calmly. "We have everything." A tiny, choked sound escaped Elizabeth's throat. Her eyes darted upwards toward the discreet, smoked-glass dome of a security camera in the ceiling, as if noticing it for the very first time. The truth of her situation was finally crashing down on her, and the arrogance that had been her armor was crumbling away, revealing the panicked, pathetic person underneath. And then he arrived. Liam didn't storm in. He didn't have to. He entered the store with a quiet, deliberate pace that was more menacing than any display of fury. He wasn't wearing his usual tailored business suit. He must have come straight from home, dressed in dark jeans and a simple gray Henley that did little to hide the powerful physique he maintained with brutal early morning workouts. But it was his face that silenced the room completely. His expression was one of cold, controlled rage. His jaw was set like granite, and his eyes, usually warm and filled with light when he looked at me, were like chips of ice. He walked directly to me, ignoring everyone else as if they were simply part of the decor. His men parted for him like the Red Sea. He gently cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs stroking my temples as he examined the angry red mark on my cheek. The touch was feather-light, but I could feel the tremor of fury running through him. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice a low growl meant only for me. I nodded, unable to speak, the knot of emotion in my throat too tight. He pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, a silent promise. Then he turned. He faced the room, and for the first time his icy gaze fell upon Elizabeth Beaumont. If she had looked horrified before, it was nothing compared to the abject terror that now seized her. She visibly shrank, pressing herself back against the locked glass door as if trying to merge with it. "Mr. Sterling, Liam," she began, her voice trembling so badly the words were barely coherent. "There has been a terrible misunderstanding. I had no idea. She never said—" Liam took a slow, deliberate step toward her. David the manager practically flattened himself against a display case to get out of his path. "You had no idea," Liam repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "No idea about what, Elizabeth? That you shouldn't assault another human being? Or just that you shouldn't assault my human being?" He stopped a few feet from her, close enough that she was trapped between him and the door. "You and I have known each other for a long time. You sit on my mother's charity boards. You come to my holiday parties, and in all that time you've never once seen my wife. Do you know why that is?" Elizabeth just shook her head, tears now welling in her eyes, smearing her expensive mascara. "It's because I wanted to protect her," Liam continued, his voice rising just enough to cut through the air like a razor. "I wanted to protect her from people exactly like you, people who judge others based on the clothes they wear, the color of their skin, people who walk through the world with a sense of entitlement so vast, so poisonous, that they believe they have the right to put their hands on another person." He took another step. He was towering over her now. "You didn't just slap my wife, Elizabeth. You slapped a woman who was waiting patiently in line. A woman who did nothing to provoke you. You did it because you looked at her and you saw someone you thought was beneath you. You saw someone you could get away with bullying." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You made a mistake." He straightened up and turned to Marcus. "Marcus, get our legal team on the phone. I want to press full assault charges and get our corporate counsel. I want to know every single business interest her husband, Richard Beaumont, has. I want to know about every stock, every property, every investment." He looked back at Elizabeth, whose face had gone from terrified to utterly broken. The mention of her husband seemed to be the final blow. "No, please," she whimpered, the tears now flowing freely. "Liam, please, it was a mistake. I'm sorry. Richard has nothing to do with this." Liam looked at her with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. "He has everything to do with this. He benefits from the world you've built for yourselves. Now he gets to watch you tear it all down." He turned his back on her, a final, brutal dismissal. He walked back to me, his arm wrapping around my shoulders, pulling me into his side. He looked at David, who was still trying to melt into the wall. "You're fired, David," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Have security escort him out." He then scanned the faces of the other staff members. "Everyone who stood by and watched this happen, who did nothing. You have 1 hour to clear out your lockers. You're all done here." Panic erupted among the staff, but my attention was pulled back to Elizabeth. She wasn't crying anymore. Her face was a mask of sheer desperation. As Marcus moved to stand beside her, his presence a clear signal that her time was up, she did something I never expected. She lunged, not at me, not at Liam, but toward a display case near the counter. It was the case holding the one-of-a-kind Centurion collection, Liam's prized line of watches, each one worth a small fortune. Before anyone could react, she grabbed the heaviest, most ornate piece, a platinum watch encrusted with black diamonds, worth over $500,000. She held it high, her eyes wild with a crazed, cornered animal look. "Stay back," she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "I mean it. You think you can ruin me? You think you can take everything from me? You want to see how much damage I can do? This is your masterpiece, isn't it, Liam? The one you unveiled last spring?" She brandished the watch like a weapon. "Let's see what it looks like smashed against that marble floor." The air crackled with a new frantic tension. Elizabeth Beaumont, once the picture of refined arrogance, was now a cornered animal, brandishing my husband's creation like a desperate weapon. The watch she held, the Midnight Star, wasn't just expensive. It was the prototype, the very first one Liam had ever designed for the Centurion line, a piece he'd told me held more sentimental value than monetary. Her threat was surgical, aimed at the one thing in the room she knew he truly cared about besides me. Liam didn't flinch. His arm tightened around me, a protective, grounding weight. He looked at the watch in her hand, then back at her wild, tear-streaked face. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was something far more devastating. Pity. "Go ahead, Elizabeth," he said, his voice calm and steady, completely robbing her of the power she was trying to seize. "Smash it. It's just a thing. I can make another one. But you? You can't make another reputation. You can't make another life once this one is in ashes." His words hit her harder than any shout could have. Her arm trembled, the heavy watch seeming to weigh 1,000 pounds. She had expected him to plead, to bargain, to show a flicker of weakness. His complete indifference to the object she held hostage left her with nowhere to go. Her grand, dramatic gesture was rendered meaningless. She looked from the watch to Liam's impassive face, and the fight seemed to drain out of her in a single, shuddering breath. The platinum watch slipped from her fingers. It didn't smash against the marble. Marcus, moving with a speed that was almost supernatural, shot his hand out and plucked it from the air, inches from the floor. He didn't even look at it, just calmly tucked it into his jacket pocket as if retrieving a dropped pen. The clatter that echoed through the store wasn't the watch. It was the sound of Elizabeth's knees hitting the cold, hard marble. She collapsed into a heap of expensive white fabric, her body racked with deep, ugly sobs of defeat. She didn't look like a powerful socialite anymore. She just looked like a broken, pathetic woman who had built her entire identity on a foundation of sand, and the tide had just come in. Liam gave Marcus a slight nod. Two of his men moved forward, helping the sobbing Elizabeth to her feet as gently as they could. "Take her to the back office," Liam instructed Marcus. "Call her husband. Tell Richard to come and collect his wife, and then you can explain to him, in detail, the legal and financial precipice upon which his family is now perched." He didn't look at her again as she was led away, her wails echoing softly before being cut off by a closing door. The showroom felt cavernous now, populated only by us, Marcus, and the shell-shocked customers who were finally being permitted to leave by a junior security guard. Liam turned to me, his focus absolute. The cold fury was gone, replaced by a deep, aching concern. He gently brushed a stray curl from my face, his fingers lingering on my cheek, where the red mark was already starting to fade into a purplish bruise. "Let's go home," he whispered. He led me out of the store, past the gawking onlookers on the sidewalk, and into the back of his waiting SUV. The door closed, shutting out the world of Fifth Avenue, of Aura, of Elizabeth Beaumont. Inside, it was just the two of us, enveloped in the quiet scent of leather and the low hum of the engine. I leaned my head on his shoulder, and for the first time since it happened, I let myself feel the sting of the slap, the heat of the humiliation, the bone-deep weariness of it all. The next few days were a blur of lawyers and PR statements. The Beaumonts, as it turned out, were leveraged to the hilt. Liam's legal team found that their entire lifestyle was a house of cards, propped up by loans secured against Richard's company's stock. When news of the impending lawsuit, and Liam's intent to divest from any funds associated with Beaumont's company, hit the financial circles, that house of cards came tumbling down. They didn't just lose their social standing, they lost everything. They were forced to sell their penthouse, their Hamptons estate. I heard through the grapevine that Elizabeth had checked herself into a wellness retreat in Arizona. I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for the emptiness that must have driven her. A week later, I was back in the Fifth Avenue store. It was closed to the public just for me. Liam had replaced the entire staff, starting with a new manager, a sharp, empathetic woman who had been promoted from the Madison Avenue branch. Liam had also instituted a new, mandatory company-wide training program focused on de-escalation, implicit bias, and treating every single person who walks through the door with dignity, not as a walking wallet, but as a human being. Liam met me at the door. He didn't say anything, just took my hand and led me to the special collections counter. Sitting there, on a velvet tray, was the watch I had come to pick up all those days ago. It was a beautiful, elegant timepiece, the back engraved with the coordinates of the little cafe where we had our first date. Beside it sat the midnight star, the platinum watch Elizabeth had almost destroyed, its black diamonds glittering under the soft lights. "I have 2 gifts for you," Liam said softly. He gestured to my anniversary gift. "The first is the one you came for." Then he picked up the midnight star. "And the second is this. I'm renaming the collection." He turned the watch over. Etched into the platinum on the back, in a delicate flowing script, was my name. Lianya. Tears welled in my eyes. It was more than a watch. It was a statement. He was putting my name, our story, on the face of his company, intertwining my quiet, private world with his loud, public one, forever. It was his way of saying he would never hide me again. "You didn't have to do this," I whispered. "I know," he said, his eyes full of a love that still took my breath away. "I wanted to. From now on, when people walk into this store, they won't just see my name, they'll see yours. They'll know that the heart of this entire empire belongs to a brilliant, strong, beautiful black woman. My wife." He slid the watch onto my wrist, its cool weight a comforting presence. The ugly memory of the slap was still there, but it no longer burned. It had been replaced by this, a symbol of love and strength, a quiet promise that I would never again be made to feel like I didn't belong in a world that was just as much mine as it was his.